You walk into a room and within 30 seconds, you've already registered the tension between two people in the corner, the slight hesitation before someone laughed, and the fact that the person who seemed fine wasn't. Nobody asked you to do that. You just did. The world calls that oversensitive, paranoid, sometimes. Or they say you read too much into things. But here's what they're actually describing. There's a specific type of person whose nervous system doesn't filter information the way most people's does. They don't choose to notice subtext. They can't not. The layers come in all at once, the words, the tone underneath the words, the gap between what someone said and what their face did when they said it. Psychologists call this sensory processing sensitivity. It's a trait first studied in depth by Dr. Elaine Aron in the 1990s, and what her research found wasn't a disorder. It was a measurable neurological difference, a nervous system that processes environmental input more thoroughly than average, not more emotionally, more deeply. That distinction matters. The experience of it is something like this. You don't watch conversations happen. You read them. Every pause is data. Every word choice is a signal. And because your brain is constantly running that kind of analysis, it's exhausting in a way that's almost impossible to explain to someone who doesn't do it. Why are you so tired? They ask. You were just sitting there. But here's what's fascinating. This trait didn't develop in a vacuum. For most people with this kind of awareness, there was an environment that trained it. A home where the mood could shift without warning. A parent whose silence you learned to read before you could read words. A childhood where knowing what was coming before it came felt like the only form of control available. The hyperawareness wasn't a flaw. It was an adaptation. And research on this is still evolving, but what we know is that this level of environmental scanning is deeply linked to early attachment patterns. The nervous system that learned to track emotional data in order to stay safe doesn't simply turn that off when the environment changes. It keeps running, even in safe rooms, even years later. And we haven't gotten to the part that most people find genuinely uncomfortable to hear about themselves yet. That's coming. Before we go further, there's a question pinned in the comments that's directly connected to what we're covering here. If this is landing in a specific way for you, go answer it. I read every single one. If some part of this is making you think about yourself differently, even slightly, that's the whole point. There's more where this came from. Here's the part that sounds counterintuitive but is completely true. The same awareness that makes these people exhausted is also what makes them the safest person in most rooms. They're the one who notices when someone's not okay before that person knows how to say it. They catch what gets missed. They hold what others drop without realizing they dropped it. They've ended conversations in their head before the other person started talking, not because they're arrogant, because their brain has already run the probable outcomes. But here's where it gets complicated. That gift has a cost, because a nervous system wired to scan for signals can't always distinguish between a real threat and an old one. The same system that protected you then keeps alerting you now in situations that don't require it. A friend's short reply, a pause before someone answered, a look that probably meant nothing. Probably, and if any of this hits somewhere deeper than you expected, that's a real signal worth listening. If these patterns feel